Good evening, students. Welcome to the live coaching classes organized by Board of Studies, ICAI. We are continuing with this topic called exemptions under GST. This is the third session on this particular topic, which we are going to discuss in detail in relation to exemptions. So before we start with our formal discussion, I, as a protocol, just wanted to get a confirmation from some of you who are listening to me online. You're able to hear me properly, and also my presentation or my screen is visible to all of you. Once I have a formal confirmation from some of you, we will start with our discussion. And students, please download this ICAI material which we are discussing. Have this material in hand with you. Reason, most of our discussion are from the institute material. And as I said earlier, this is the best compilation from your examination point of view. The examples, the illustrations, the problems, the way they have presented, it is good enough for our preparation in our examination. And as the faculty teaches you, if you have the material side by side, it is easy for you to make a running notes also for the topics what we are discussing, right? So with this backdrop, let us start with our today's discussion. And thanks for the confirmation. Thanks, Shanish, Viraj, and Mansa. Let us kickstart with our today's discussion. So what I'll do, this is a total modus operandi for our discussion. We will first understand the provisions. In the process, we will discuss some examples. Also, I have few MCQs where we will make an attempt to solve or apply the provisions what we are learning for today, right? Before we start, I'll just give you one more tip for the day. When we read this topic on exemptions, where all we have an implication, and as a chartered accountant, what are our responsibilities with respect to aspects we have to take care of? When we study about exemption, basic check, section 11 of CGST Act or SGST Act or section 6 of IGST Act, we will refer. B, I would be either given with a notification or an order specifying a particular goods or a particular service, or specifying the supplier or recipient who are exempted under GST. Also, we have studied that there is an explanation which will be inserted as per section 11, subsection 3, within 1 year from the relevant date of notification. This is the basic background we have checked. And where do we check this particular exemption notifications? In relation to goods, notification 2 of 2017 central tax rate. In relation to services, we refer 12 of 2017 central tax rate. These are the principal notifications. These notifications get amended every now and then. So our job is to refer to the principal notification and the modifications which are done for the principal notification. Now, whenever we come across that there is a transaction, this transaction under GST, we refer this as a term called supply. So whenever there is a supply, our job is to examine whether there is a levy or not. If there is a levy, whether this activity is taxable or this activity is exempted. So aspects which are subject to levy under GST, we would examine whether these aspects are taxable or exempted. If taxable, we will go ahead to identify what is the respective rate of tax, and then we would be paying the tax. Also, we would be checking the terms and conditions relevant while making the remittance of taxes. So what if the goods and services which we supply are exempted under GST? Then we examine whether this is an absolute exemption or conditional. Please remember, when it is absolute conditional, when it is absolute exemption, no tax can be collected. No tax can be collected beyond specified amount, specified rate of tax. So here we need to remember that I can collect only tax if it is taxable. If it is exempted, and that too if it is absolute exemption, then I cannot collect tax. In case if there is a absolute exemption with a small nominal rate of tax of say to 3%, 1%, then beyond that I cannot collect the tax. So absolute exemption is a scenario where absolute exemption is a scenario where my rate of tax will be either nil or some nominal threshold limit beyond which I cannot collect tax. Exemption which is conditional. These are subject to some terms and conditions. On satisfaction of the specified terms and conditions, I can enjoy this particular exemption. Now, absolute exemption, no choice, you have to go with this. Conditional exemption, subject to fulfillment of my terms and conditions, I can avail the exemption. These are the basic aspects which we have discussed in session 1, session number 2. Now, in addition to this particular discussion, whatever we have learned, few more aspects. First and foremost, we would not issue a tax invoice. We would not issue a tax invoice. Rather, we issue a document called bill of supply. Bill of supply. When the goods are exempted, when the services are exempted, we issue a document called bill of supply, right? Also, in addition to this, we would disclose these transactions in respect to GSTR1 or GSTR3, where we would show to the tax officer that these are the supplies made during a tax period, and on this particular supplies, we have not paid particular taxation. So as a chartered accountant, our homework would be, along with this, have the reference of the particular notification or order relied upon for non-payment of tax. Then we would examine restrictions for input tax credit. Restrictions for input tax credit. Are we supposed to claim input tax? Are there any conditions attached for availment of input tax credit, right? So these are the basic aspects which we deal with exemptions when we examine a particular supply. So these are the basic aspects which we need to keep in mind before we apply particular exemption notification. And quickly, let's look at some discussions what we have made in the previous session. We'll have a recap of our previous discussion and start with our today's discussion. So in the previous session, students, we had a discussion on services provided by government, where we had examined this 17 entries where how government has services rendered by government are levied to particular GST. Basic section which we started with is subsection entry number 5 in notification 12 of 2017. All these activities of services which is in relation to schedule number 11 of the Constitution or schedule number 12 of the Constitution are which is in relation to municipality or panchayat. These activities are exempted under GST. Like we have discussed, construction of roads, canals, electrification, healthcare, providing basic education. So these are all various functions which are connected with panchayat or municipality under Article 243W or Article 243G. Next, we had discussed that any services rendered by state government, central government, local authority, or union territory. These services are exempted in general. Exempted in general. There are certain exclusions. Exclusion 1, services by Department of Force. Exclusion 2, services in relation to aircraft or vessel. Exclusion 3, transportation services in relation to goods or passenger. This we have discussed that there is something called competition or business parlance where services rendered by private parties, services rendered by the government authorities, there should be a level playing field. To provide that particular level playing field, we have discussed that these activities would be exempted under GST, barring these 3 services. So we have services in relation to post, services in relation to aircraft or vessel, also services in relation to goods or passenger services. This is what we have discussed. In addition to that, we have noted that services in relation to business entities, these are excluded from exemption. Why? Government wanted to recover tax from this particular services which are given to business entities. Again, this is not a blanket exemption, nor blanket levy. We have discussed this in detail where services to a business entity. We have to examine whether this business entity is registered under GST, not registered under GST. Business entity not registered under GST, probably reason one, threshold limit. My turnover is less than 20 lakhs or 10 lakhs specified under section 22. Probably that could be the reason why I am not registered. Or I could be dealing with exempted supply. My entire supply is supply of goods or services which are exempted under GST law. Probably that could be the reason why I have not registered. So here, services to a business entity, if rendered to register, this is not exempt. This is not exempt. That means to say, the business entity will be paying tax on reverse charge, excluding three services. We have discussed, one is in relation to postal department, second is in relation to vessel or aircraft, third is in relation to transportation. These three aspects are covered under forward charge. Like when we talk about transportation, remember Indian Railways. When we book a train ticket by first class AC or AC department or first class, we would be paying tax to the IRCTC. So wherever these services are there, this would be under forward charge. Barring this, any other services rendered by central government, state government, local authority, or union territory to a business entity, that would not be exempt. If it is rendered to a business entity who is not registered, then this would be exempt. This would be exempt. This is what we need to understand. When we discussed this particular entry, there was further one exemption notification where this services up to rupees 5,000, no need to pay GST, no GST. So if I receive services from central government, state government, local authority or union territory as a business entity, up to rupees 5,000, I need not pay any GST. This is a continuation of my exemption notification. There is something called continuous supply of services. In case of continuous supply of services, section 2, clause 31, where in a financial year, total value of supply should be less than 5,000. Even in this case, I need not pay any GST. So this is a list of services where we need to understand that government services are taxable. Government services are taxable for the three services which are mentioned therein. And services rendered to a business entity, even that is excluded from exemption. Exclusion, that means it is taxable. Right? So business entities, we need to see if business entity is registered, then the exemption is not there. If business entity is not registered, then exemption will be applicable. Then quickly we will come to some important other discussions. This is one another important discussion. Entry number 47, where services rendered by a state government, central government, local authority or union territory in relation to registration which is required under any law for time being force. We had solved one particular MCQ in the previous class where I have taken a factory license. For a moment, let us assume that there is a factory license. Or say vehicle registration. There is something called vehicle fitment test. So there is a RTA, Road Transport Agency, who are the authorities who are permitted to give a license for registration. So any fees I pay to the RTA is concerned, this comes under my particular registration, which is under any law for timing in force. So these are the payments in case if it is mandatory, then my exemption would be applicable. So for a moment, let us assume that for obtaining factory license, I paid sum of rupees 25,000 to the licensing authority. The amount which I have paid, uh, though it is exceeding 5,000, though I am a person registered under GST as a business entity, by virtue of this entry number 41, I need not pay GST. I need not pay GST. Similarly, we had a detailed discussion on testing, calibration, safety check, or certification relating to protection of safety of workers, consumers, or public at large, including fine license required under any law for time being in force. These two entries I have to read carefully. Where any amounts paid by a business entity, this is very important. This is very important for the reason when we review the assessee, when we review the profit and loss account, there is an item called rates and taxes. When you audit a particular assessee, look at the profit and loss on the debit side of P&L account. We had an expense called rates and taxes. Generally, when there is a departmental audit, they say, give me the breakup of this particular rates and taxes. Any particular expenses which are spent to central government or state government or a local authority on these particular activities, the departmental audit will say to a business entity who is registered under GST, they would say, please pay tax under RCM. Please pay tax under reverse charge mechanism. The aspect of reverse charge mechanism, this is covered by notification 13 of 2017. This is under central tax rate. So government officers, they would be interested to collect tax under these expenses which we have booked under rates and taxes. So when we book some expenses under rates and taxes, please examine this entry number 47, which is covered in notification 12 of 2017, where you will see, sir, if there is any registration for which I have paid the fees, or there is any testing or calibration or any license which is required under any law for time being in force, no GST. If these conditions are satisfied, no GST. Please remember, examination. One question could be tested on exemptions, probably a weightage of 4 marks. We examine the applicability of exemption notification in relation to an education institution. If not education institution, exemption in relation to services provided by the government authorities. Now, wherever there is a scope for testing, those are the questions which will be tested. Practically, these are the areas which are widely tested when we do a GST audit, when we file annual return, or when we have an audit by the departmental officer under Section 65. Under Section 65, the GST officer conducts something called GST audit. Here, they try to ascertain whether you have paid tax properly under forward charge, you have paid tax on reverse charge, have you availed input tax credit, have you issued something called self-tax invoice. Whenever you pay tax under RCM, this is a self-tax invoice, tax paid document for availment of input tax credit. Now, these are all interconnected topics when we read exemptions under GST. Hope you are getting, students. So this entry number 47, this is little important. Please mark and read, not only examination point of view, from your practical audit point of view, you will use widely this particular entry number 47. Next. Next, construction services. In relation to construction services, we have discussed that uh, pure labor services, pure labor contract services are alone exempted. Similarly, services of works contract in relation to residential unit alone are exempted, and residential complex are taxable under GST. Passenger transport service, we had discussed entry number 9964, entry number 9966. This is in relation to passenger transport service. This is in relation to hiring of motor vehicle service. There is one circular which is referred in our institute material. Very, very relevant, this particular examination of passenger transport service. Examination, again, this is one another particular entry which would be relevant. Not only that, from your practical application point of view, when you do internal audit or when you have to face a GST departmental assessment, this is one entry. You wait and watch. If assessee is not paying GST under reverse charge, please examine whether they have understood this particular entry carefully. Now, I'll just recap this particular discussion once again. Contract carriage. There is a definition which is given in our institute material. They have explained what is a contract carriage. Once we understand this particular definition of contract carriage, you can refer to page number 58 of our institute material, where they have defined or they have explained what is a contract carriage. This particular contract carriage, like I don't define the route. I don't specify the timings. I don't hold the control. I don't hold the control on this particular contract carriage. If all these conditions are satisfied, passenger transport service through non-AC is exempted. Passenger transport through AC is taxable. Now, please remember, if you get into any bus, which is an air-conditioned bus, that will be subjected to GST. Any passenger transport service through a non-motorized contract carriage, this is exempt under GST. Now, this is covered under entry number 9964. In relation to hiring of motor vehicle, which is covered under 9966, where institute material explained and elaborated in detail. Suppose I hire a contract carriage for a particular transportation purpose. Example, pickup and drop of employees. Pickup and drop activity of employees. This, what I will do, I will specify what route the contract carriage has to be applied. I'll specify what time the particular pickup and drop should be done. Once the vehicle reaches factory, I hold that particular vehicle till the end of office hours. Then I would use that for dropping back to employees. Then this particular activity is not covered under this particular entry number 15. Rather, this would be taxable under the head 9966, which is called renting of a motor vehicle with operator or hiring of a motor vehicle with operator. This is one another aspect. Please wait and watch from your examination point of view for 4 months. Examination, they'll give you a scenario where they will explain what is the nature of service. They'll explain who is the service provider. They'll explain who is the service recipient. For examination point of view, they will specify this contract carriage without AC. Without AC. Reason? With AC, this is taxable. So they'll specify that this is a contract carriage with AC, without AC. To deviate your attention, please examine this and give your answer appropriately. Then, services by road or vessel, there is a specific list which we have discussed. In addition to this, we also discussed in detail who is a GTA, what terms and conditions are there for a GTA, when this particular activity is taxable, and services of a GTA in relation to individual, services of a GTA in relation to unregistered casual taxable person. These alone are exempt. these alone are exempt. Any services rendered by GTA to a registered factory, to a registered society, to a registered unincorporated body, or any of those list of entries they have given, those would be taxable. Now, services of a GTA, again, you have something called forward charge, reverse charge. When is reverse charge? Services given to notified persons. Any services of a GTA to a notified person, this would be under reverse charge. Forward charge, if GTA is willing to pay tax at the rate of 12% on this particular activity. These are few aspects which you need to remember from GTA point of view. Let's move to our today's discussion where we have stopped. Entry number in relation to banking and financial services. Come to page number 70. Come to page number 70. Come to page number 70 where we have stopped in relation to banking and financial services. Students, in between whatever topics we have discussed, you have any doubt which you want to re-explain, or you want to correlate with the example or the case study which you have come across in your internship, feel free to ask me. I'll clarify a little more again. Coming to next entry, banking and financial services, I'll make very, very simple this particular activity. First entry number 27. Services rendered by banking and financial services, which is covered by way of extending deposits, extending loans in advances, deposits, fixed deposit, recurring deposit, or for that moment, interest paid on savings bank account. Interest collected on loans or advances, insofar as consideration is represented by way of interest or discount other than interest involved in credit card services. This is exempted under entry number 27. I'll explain in detail this particular entry. Very, very important from your application point of view. This particular entry number 27. There is a supply which is called activity of lending or deposit. This is my activity. Who is a service provider? Banking or financial institution. Banking or financial institution. Service recipient, they have not defined anything. They have specified something called consideration. My consideration is represented by way of interest or discount. Interest or discount. If these activities are undertaken, then this particular supply would be exempt. This particular supply would be exempt. Let us understand this a little more carefully by way of basic examples. Say example number 1, fixed deposit. The customer and service provider. Customer is an individual. Service provider is a bank. Money parked as a fixed deposit. Banker has an obligation to pay to the individual interest at a certain agreed upon periodical point in time, which is nothing but this is a consideration. This is a consideration for the money which is deposited by the banker. So this particular activity is exempted by virtue of entry number 27. Entry number 27. Similarly, let us take example number 2. Example number 2. Say XYZ Limited avail working capital loan from SBI at the rate of say 12% per annum. Now, say principal amount, say rupees 10 lakhs. Every month, time value of money, the money which is given by the banker will be subjected to consideration, which is nothing but interest payable on loan outstanding. This particular interest is exempted by virtue of entry number 27. This is what they are trying to cover. This is what they are trying to explain. They are trying to explain in our entry number 27. Now from here, I'll come to example number 3. Example number 3. Say XYZ Limited supplies goods to ABC Limited for rupees 20 lakh. Credit period, say 30 days. Now, assuming that if there is any default or delay, by whom? By ABC Limited, then penal interest at the rate of say 12% is applicable. Now here, this is a transaction where XYZ Limited is a seller, ABC Limited is a buyer, right? So here, buyer has to make the payment of 20 lakhs within a credit period of 30 days. Assuming that there is a delay or default for 3 months. For these 3 months, this seller, XYZ Limited, receive penal interest, which is nothing but 20 lakhs into 12 by 100 into 3 divided by 12. This would be the whatever consideration I get. This is my consideration which is collected by XYZ Limited. Now, please give your answer. Will this money, assuming for a moment, this is say 3 4s are 4 3s are, say assuming 36,000, is my consideration. On 36,000 is GST applicable. Now, this goods which are sold, assuming the rate of tax is 12%. Assuming the rate of tax GST is 12%. These goods are taxable and the rate of tax is 12%. What would be your answer? When XYZ Limited collects 20 lakhs after a period of 3 months, along with the penal interest of 36,000, will XYZ Limited get exemption under entry number 27, or is this particular entry, this particular 36,000 exempted under GST? Please examine and give your answer. Abdul Rahim says taxable. Mansha says taxable. Why entry number 27 is not applicable, Rahim or Mansa? Answer is correct. But why is that it is not taxable? Why is that it is not exempted under entry number 27? Why I cannot enjoy the exemption? What could be the reason? Okay. Rahim says taxable. Mansa says taxable. Geeta says taxable. Amir Hussain also says yes, it is taxable. Good. Now, I'll come back to our discussion once again. banking or financial institution, financial services, services by way of extending deposit, loans, or advances insofar as the consideration is represented by way of interest or discount other than interest involved in credit card services. This is my entry number 27. This is my entry number 27. Now, heading says banking or financial services. Heading says banking or financial services. This is as per our institute material. If you look at the original entry, entry number 27 says services by way of extending deposit, loans, or advances insofar as consideration is represented by way of interest or discount other than interest involved in credit card services. In this entire entry number 27, they didn't say banks or financial institutions. Now, for a moment, I'm a company where my articles of association gives a particular entry where I'm permitted to a business of lending of money or using of money in nature in similar to banking or financial institutions. I may not be entity registered as a bank, but I can still extend services in relation to bank or financial institution. Now, Geeta Hussein Savanan. Can I say in this example, am I debarred as a company, am I debarred in giving these particular services? Am I debarred in giving these particular services? Please give your answer. Now, I'll give you the backdrop. I'll give you the money. I'm just giving you, I'm pausing for a moment just to see your thought process. Like, we should be able to justify and apply the provision and also to satisfy ourselves when it is beneficial. How do we interpret exception? XYZ Limited, ABC Limited. XYZ Limited, I'm giving scenario 1. XYZ Limited lends 20 lakhs at rate of 12% for 6 months. Scenario 2. XYZ Limited gives a on credit supply for 20 lakhs. Penal interest at the rate of 12% beyond 30 days. Now, scenario one, intercorporate lending. A company can give loan to another company. XYZ gives a loan to ABC Limited. XYZ Limited is neither a bank nor a NBFC. Can XYZ give funding to ABC Limited? If yes, can entry number 27, can benefit of entry number 27 enjoyed here? Please, for scenario 1, I'm extending my discussion. For scenario 1, can entry number 27 be extended to scenario number 1? Yes, Geeta, I'm trying to give a clarity for that particular thought process. I'm trying to give that clarity, ma. Scenario number 1, whatever consideration is received, assuming 20 lakhs, assuming 2 lakhs is interest. Just hypothetical example, 2 lakhs is the interest collected by XYZ Limited. On this 2 lakhs, is GST applicable or exempted? Hope this example is clear, Geeta. If you're still not clear, let me know. I'll make it a little more simple. 7 and says it is not the main business. I got your thought process, 7. I'll clarify that also now. Now, answer for scenario number 1, entry number 27 is applicable. It is applicable. Why? Because the consideration is by way of interest on loan extended. Interest on loan extended. Let me come to my entry. Extending deposits, loans, or advances insofar as consideration is represented by way of interest. In this particular scenario, there is a loan given. On loan, there is a consideration. What is the consideration? Time value of money. Time value of money at the rate of 12%, which is nothing but my interest. If these 3 conditions are satisfied, entry number 27 is applicable. So, by virtue of this particular discussion, my scenario number one, it is exempted under GST. Amir Hussain says can lend and take the benefit. Aniket Jain says exempted because extending inter-party loan. Now, hope all of you have understood that whenever we talk about loans and advances, please keep in mind, this is not only for a bank or financial institution, right? This is a basic point I would like to drive. I'll explain scenario number 2. Now, scenario number 2, there is a, I'll break this entry like this. Like scenario 2, step 1. What is step 1? Sale of goods on credit basis. Step 2. Credit for 30 days. Step 3. Delay beyond 30 days. Penal interest applicable at the rate of, say, 15%, I say 12%, at the rate of 12% per annum. Now, this is what I'm trying to say. So, why I'm explaining this reason, all this is covered under section 15, which talks about value of supply. This is a topic which I'm going to cover you 2 sessions down the line. From here 2 sessions, we will discuss on value of supply. I'll just come quickly to section 15, which gives a clarity on how do we apply this particular topic. Hope my screen is visible, students. Section 15, which talks about value of taxable supply. Subsection 2, the value of supply shall include, shall is mandatory, include in this. Let me just come little down. Yeah. Clause number D, where it says interest or late fee or penalty for delayed payment of any consideration for any supply. So in case you have interest or late fee or penalty, whatever name you use, this is in relation to delay in consideration. Then what does section 15 say? This will form part of value of supply. My section 15 specifically says that, subsection 2 says that any interest or late fee or penalty which is for delayed payment of consideration, then it is to be part of my value of supply. This is what relevance from section 15. Examination, please wait and watch for one question in relation to entry number 27. Entry number 27, which is in relation to consideration by way of interest or discount. Interest or discount. This is what tested again for 4 marks. Hope this discussion is clear, students. I'll come back to my slide. Now, considering section 15, now, step 1, sale of goods. If sale of goods is taxable, then whatever penal interest I collect in step 3, this is also taxable. For a moment, in step 3, penal interest, I collect sum of rupees, say 36,000. If I collect 36,000, whatever is the GST, rate is there for goods, or whatever is the GST rate for step 1, applied for step 3. So, if my goods are taxable at the rate of 18%, I pay GST on step 3, that is penal interest, 18%. If my goods are exempted under step 1, my penal interest under step 3 is also exempted. This is what we need to understand. Scenario 2, read with section number 15. Is this clear for everyone? Mansa is asking a question. So it means any service provider can enjoy this exemption. Answer is blanket yes. I repeat once again, entry number 27, it doesn't specify a banking company or a non-banking financial company or a financial institution. It doesn't say as such. So any service provider who receives consideration by way of interest or discount in extension of a loan or deposit is exempted under entry number 27. Next question. Geeta says, in second case, penal interest provision is not applicable, so taxable. Geeta, I'm saying that in second case, that is second scenario 2, we will apply provisions of section 15 because my main supply is supply of goods. In relation to this, I'm getting a penal interest. By virtue of section 15 subsection 2, that gets taxed if the goods are taxable. My scenario 1, my activity is lending of money. My scenario 2, my activity is supply of goods. In course of supply of goods, if I draw any penal interest, that is forming part and parcel of my consideration. Hope this point is clear, Geeta. Aniket says no taxable because it is not by way of extending loan advance, but as sale of goods. Perfectly correct, Aniket. Your understanding is clear. Rahim says clear. So I'll come back to my discussion on this particular point. Hope entry number 27 is clear, ma? 27 is clear. One important point when we read about 27, unfortunately, so this is how law, policy matter, they say, this entry 27, other than interest, involved in credit card services. Unfortunately. Now, why they have excluded credit card services? This is a policy matter. We cannot question or challenge this. So here, for a moment, I have a SBI credit card. I enjoy a credit period of 30 days. If I don't pay to the credit card agency within a span of 30 days, then whatever interest is collected by credit card agency would be subjected to GST. Unfortunately, entry number 27 is not applicable. Entry number 27 is not applicable. This is what we need to keep in mind with respect to entry number 27. Only services in relation to entry number 27 other than credit card will be applicable. So any services by processing, etc. by credit card are also taxable under GST. Are also taxable under GST law. Then services provided by banking company to basic savings account holders of Pradhan Mantri Jan Dhan Yojana are exempted. Generally, services provided by banker. Now I'll explain this way. I'll come to my slide to explain this. Bank or financial institution, only interest or discount is exempt. So where do we use discount? Bill discounting is one example where you can think of. Or you have this commercial paper. Commercial paper, again, this is where you have a liquidity. This is dealt in your primary market, where again, I use time value of money, discounting, etc. Now, cases where I get a discount as a financial institution, that is my consideration. These are exempted under GST. Banks or financial institution do something called processing fee or account maintenance charges or DP services or your mobile alert charges. Please keep in mind, these are all services which are taxable. These are all services which are taxable. No benefit of entry number 27. No benefit of entry number 27. Why? Only those services of extending deposit are exempted. All other ancillary services are taxable. This is what we need to understand from this particular entry number 27. I'll come back to my material. Then entry number 34, again, this is an ancillary service. There is a lending bank. There is a services of acquiring bank to any person in relation to settlement of an amount up to rupees 2000. Settlement of an amount up to rupees 2000 in a single transaction. I'll give one example to understand this entry. Let's take example of Diwali. Say HDFC Axis Bank. Axis Bank, like let's assume that my company employer wanted to give a cash bonus of rupees 5,000. Say, let me make it very simple, easy to understand. Bonus of rupees 1,500 per employee. Now, I cannot give cash of 1,500 to employee. What I will do, I'll approach Axis Bank saying that please issue a card. Now, this is neither a debit card nor a credit card. This is a special card. This is a special card where currency of 1,500 would be loaded in this particular card. And this card would be redeemed per shopping. Now, all the employees would enjoy. They go Amazon, they go to any e-commerce website, they go to any shop where they use this particular card and they get a benefit up to 1,500. Something like your Sodexo coupons. Sodexo vouchers, like food coupons or Sodexo vouchers, like an employer gives a coupon which is preloaded with the currency, which can be used as a transaction for settlement purpose. Now, something like that is this entry, where acquiring bank gives a service of settlement up to rupees 2,000 in a single transaction through a credit card, debit card, charge card, or other payment card service, which can be called as a service which is exempted. Now, what benefit the bank gets? Bank is getting no services of this banking service. So these are the activities which are exempted under this particular entry 34. Then entry number 39A, this is little macro level topic where they say services by a intermediary, services by intermediary or financial services, which are located in multi-service SEZ with IFSC status. Location, point number 1. Point number 2, intermediary of financial services. These two entities, which generally extend support services for financing activity, for loan purpose, for extending liquidity, for foreign currency, various activities done in this particular location, which is recognized by IRDA, which is recognized by these agencies. They enjoy exemption from GST. Basically, we call like a SEZ unit. SEZ unit is a unit which ensures that foreign earnings happens to a particular country. Similarly, this particular financial intermediary or financial services located in a SEZ, multi-service SEZ with IFSC status. Now, this IFSC status is not given to any general entity, specific entities which render services to these foreign entities or foreign institutions. This is just to ease out your forex transaction. All those services are exempted in general under this particular entry number 39A. Now, continuation to this entry number 27, Institute material made an attempt to discuss various examples where services of financial institution, services of a bank, services where a consideration is represented by way of interest or discount, whether it is exempted or taxable. They have discussed at length on these services. Point number 1. Invoices, discounting, check discounting or similar form. Discounting, I gave example of bill discounting. Bill discounting is exempted under GST. Why? Entry number 27. Consideration should be by way of interest or by way of discount. I will give one example for this bill discounting case. In intermediate, we have studied this particular aspect. Say XYZ Limited supplies goods to ABC Limited for rupees 50 lakhs. This supply is converted to a bill. Negotiable Instrument Act, a note drawn by the drawer and accepted by drawee to make the payment at a point in time. This supply, a sundry data from the books, is converted as a bill. This entity, XYZ Limited, approaches, the bill is presented to, say, State Bank of India, where XYZ Limited approaches to State Bank of India saying that, please give me a money of 50 lakhs, which is payable by ABC Limited at the end of period, say 60 days. SBI says, okay, there is a time value of money. There is a time value of money where the lending rate is, say, 16%. So they discount this particular bill. Instead of paying 50 lakhs, say nominal to 1.6 lakhs. This time value of money is, say, 1.6 lakhs. They deduct this particular 1.6 lakhs, 48.4 lakhs, rupees 48.4 lakhs is paid by State Bank of India to XYZ Limited. At the date of end of 60 days point in time, ABC Limited, on presenting the bill, they honor the bill, SBI gets the payment. This 1.6 lakhs rupees is a consideration, to SBI. This consideration is duly covered under entry number 27 for exemption under GST, whereby State Bank of India does not pay any GST on this particular bill discounting charges. On this particular bill discounting charges. Hope this is clear, students. There's one point from Mansa. So last month I made a payment through debit card getting registered under ICAI MCS training program. ICAI has charged GST on fees as per entry number 66. This should be exempted. Your thoughts? Okay. Look at this way, Mansa. What is this MCS? What is this MCS, Bhagya? Can you just throw light on this? Mansa's question is, okay, I'll put it this way, Mansa. Money collected by ICAI towards tuition fee, towards material which is forming part and parcel of your curriculum or conducting an examination. These are all covered under entry number 66, whereby no GST is applicable. Suppose there is a bank like Razorpay, like when I make a payment, I have a payment gateway or I have a Razorpay gateway. If payment gateway is collecting some interest, if this amount is collected by Razorpay or Paytm Bank, which is also added to this particular curriculum or this particular payment transaction, then this would not be exempted under GST. Services rendered by a third party. Services of soft skills program. Any program which is covered under your curriculum, then that would be exempted under GST. Online subscription to a magazine or course content, that will be exempted up to any education which is pre-schooling or higher secondary school, that is taxable. Anything other than that would be taxable. That is how we need to examine. So that would be my answer with respect to entry number 66. Good thought process, Mansa. With that, you're evaluating what we are studying along with what we are coming across day-to-day activities. Yeah. Interest on delayed payment charges charged to clients for delay in payment of brokerage amount, settlement obligation, margin trading facility. Now, this is exempt from GST since settlement obligations and margin trading facility are transactions which are in the nature of extending loans or advances. Now, this I'll put it this way. This is a transaction where brokerage amount or settlement obligation. When you do a trade on a particular platform, you will be given certain T plus 3 point in time to make the settlement. This is nothing but an advance given by that particular platform, right? When loans or advances are given and delay for making a payment for that particular advance is and the money is recovered by way of interest or say penal interest or discount, whatever be the name you call. This would be exempted under entry number 27. So here they are saying that since settlement obligations and margin trading facilities are transactions which are in the nature of extending loans or advances. By virtue of this, any interest which is collected would be exempted under GST. It would be exempted under GST. Similarly, credit card, please keep in mind this by default, wherever you come across credit card, no exemption. This is liable to GST. Why? Entry number 27 itself is excluding your credit card. By virtue of that, any interest paid for delay in default in payment of credit card that would be subjected to GST. Collateral borrowing and lending obligation. This is again by way of loan. This would be exempted in GST. Repo, reverse repo. Repo, reverse repo. This is a transaction between bank and RBI. So money given to RBI, money drawn from RBI. This is again by way of loans and advances exempted under GST. Income from commercial paper, primary market, secondary market, where liquidity is there in primary market. This commercial paper, which is days settlement. In commercial, in primary market, what we do, we borrow money for a week's time. We borrow money for 3 days point in time. All this T plus 3, T plus 5 days transaction. This is again by way of loans or advances. Loans and advances, entry number 27 is applicable, exempted under GST. Assignment or assignment of sale of security or secured debt. Now, this is something I would not say straight away it is a loan or advance. We had something called what you call auction, not auction, security. This money, which is called as a debt, secured debt or unsecured debt. My money, which is recorded as a debt, which is taking its form as security, is neither supply of goods nor supply of services. And this is covered under the definition called actionable claim. Because this activity is covered under actionable claim, any money by way of assignment of this security will also be taking the position of an actionable claim. By virtue of that, this particular interest would not be subjected to GST. Please remember, there is a section 8 which talks about your composite or mixed supply. By reasoning of your composite supply, my principal activity, I would say, my principal activity is actionable claim. This actionable claim I would call as a security. This is neither goods nor services. This is neither goods nor services. By virtue of this, any assignment of that particular debt would not be either supply of goods nor supply of services. No GST is applicable on this. A fee collected by way of a assignment of sale of security. Interest on debt, like you have your equity, preference shares, debt capital. Any money extended by way of debt capital, because it is the nature of borrowing, extending loans or advances, entry number 27 is applicable. So any company which borrows money by way of debentures, interest paid to the debenture holders, this money is exempted under GST law. Assuming that XYZ Limited holds 50% of debentures in a company called PQR Limited. When PQR Limited pays interest to XYZ Limited by virtue of entry number 27, no GST is applicable on interest drawn by XYZ Limited. Interest on finance lease transaction. Now, this is a very interesting example discussion. Interest on finance lease. I'll come to a slide to make you a little more clear. Interest in case of finance lease. Sorry. In case of a finance all of you are aware, there is a accounting standard or NDS which deals with your operating lease, finance lease. Finance lease is a case where the lessor gives an asset to the lessee for payment of lease payments. There is something called your basic cost To this, I make something called interest. I get something called high purchase price or lease payment asset cost. Now here, my basic cost is for supply of goods. Supply of goods. Because there is a supply of goods, there is interest, which is nothing but time value of money. Time value of money. Time value of money. This time value of money is coming or drawing its origination because there is a supply. If this supply of goods is taxable, then this interest also would be taxable. Benefit of entry number 27 is not applicable. Is not applicable. This is one another transaction. Examination, 4 marks theory question, or practically if you have dealt with accounting of lease companies, when you have done an audit of this leasing companies, you would come across this particular transaction. Any interest which is debited on periodical basis on the assets which are given on hire purchase basis, because the principal supply goods are taxable, my interest also would be taxable. This is my principal supply. This is my ancillary supply. Considering your section 15, subsection 2, value of supply, benefit of entry number 27 is not applicable. Reason: interest is not a standalone entry by virtue of loan or advance. Loan or advance. Since the lessor is not giving a loan or advance, lessor is giving an asset, and the cost of that asset, time value of money, is recovered. That is a consideration required by way of interest. My entry number 27 benefit is not applicable. Hope this is clear, students. Hope this is clear. Any doubts? Let me know before I go further. Main income of aviation sector, interest income on lease. Yes, ma'am. Time value of money, because this is nothing but whatever asset I have extended, benefit of this entry would not be applicable. Examination, wait and watch for one question on this particular pattern. Then interest fee on credit card settlement, because credit card is taxable, interest settlement is also taxable. Securitization transactions by banks. Now, securitization, again, like we have discussed there, this is also not subjected to GST. Because why? Any actionable claims on neither supply of goods nor supply of services. Now, additional paid interest on the overdue loan. Now here, this entry, they have referred to something called agreeing to do an obligation or to refrain from an act. In fact, there is one circular 178. I'll come to my, I'll give an example this way. Entry number 27, read with circular 178, read with schedule number 2. Schedule number 2. Agreeing to tolerate an act. Agreeing to tolerate an act. I'll cover this particular thing by way of an example. Scenario 1, scenario 2. Scenario 1, scenario 2. In scenario 1, sale of goods, sale of goods 40,000. credit period, 30 days, delay penal interest, say at the rate of 12%. For delay in making the payment, penal interest rate of 12%. Scenario 2, sale of goods, 40,000. Option for availing loan on EMI basis. Option for availing loan on EMI basis. Consideration for loan is by way of interest. This is what is discussed in this particular example. So all of you are aware, when sale of goods is there, when credit period is there, any delay in period of delay where penal interest is collected, we will apply section 15 subsection 2, where this penal interest is a consideration. Accordingly, penal interest is taxable if main supply is taxable. So when I sell the goods, assuming that GST rate is at the rate of 18%, whatever penal interest I collect by virtue of section 15 subsection 2, this penal interest is going to become a consideration, and this I have to include as a consideration for main supply. Whatever is the rate applicable, the same is applicable at the rate of 18% for this particular consideration. Benefit of entry number 27 is not applicable. This is what scenario 1. In scenario 2, I go one step beyond. I sell the goods. What I am doing, I'm giving an option to the customer. Look, you buy goods for 40,000, where you make a down payment. In case after down payment, EMIs are applicable. So here, if down payment is made and EMIs are applicable, there is something called tolerance of an act. Now, what is that? This loan has to be paid promptly. If there is any default, this default is made good by way of a penal charges. This penal charges or additional interest. This penal charges or interest charges, they are saying that this is not an interest or discount. Rather, this is tolerance by virtue of schedule number 2. By virtue of schedule number 2, they are saying that this is a tolerance. And when we read in circular number 178, they say that they use a term, my consideration is de novus, that is, the benefit of consideration will be taxable. Reason, you're making the loan account active by way of recovering something called penal charges or additional interest. Generally, what happens whenever there is a default, my loan account may become a NPA. This NPA is made as an active account by virtue of your penal charges. This activity, which is called as a tolerance, is held to be taxable by virtue of circular number 178. Read with your schedule number 2. This is what they're trying to explain in this particular example in your institute material, entry number 77. It is more technical. When in your final level, I would say this may not be tested so rigorously in your examination. Reason, this requires expert knowledge to intercept, to read the circular, to read and apply schedule number 2 for this particular given transaction. However, Institute material has set a fantastic example by drawing a difference how scenario 1, how scenario 2 is being discussed. Hope this is clear, students. Let me see any doubts. So far, so good. I'll come to further discussion. I'm going in depth where you have to make a differentiation in application of provisions. I'm initially when we have discussed applicability of a financial institution, applicability of a bank, how these aspects have to be dealt. I'm stressing in detail to draw your attention. Transaction between authorized dealer, transaction between banks by way of a foreign exchange, by way there is a discount involved. This is also exempted under GST. Next, moving on to the further discussion. Life insurance, business services. Life insurance and business services are pretty simple. These are covered in relation to insurance activity. Keep in mind all these aspects of insurance which are mandatory, insurance which are predominant benefit to state government, central government, local authority, or pension scheme where there is encouragement by the government. These are per se exempted under GST. Institute material has compiled these things. Beauty of this thing, institute material, they have highlighted the terminology which are relevant. The moment you see this MCQ question, you can make out whether it is taxable or exempted. So activities of life insurance, which are in relation to annuity under national pension scheme, exempted. Services of a life insurance in relation to the services provided to Army, Naval, Air Force or group insurance funds, exempted under GST law. Services of a life insurances provided by Naval Group Insurance Fund, these are also tax exempted under GST law. When I deal with section 15, read with valuation rules, there is a specific valuation rule which gives exemption for various, the rate of tax. For few schemes, 100% is taxable. For few schemes, 25% of the premium is taxable. For few schemes, some amount of premium alone is taxable. So don't worry too much on this insurance premium from examination point of view. Then services provided by specific bodies, ESI, EPF, coal mines, national pension scheme. These are all again certain schemes which are exempted under GST law. Insurance business, general insurance business provided to some again recognized scheme which is there in page number 81. I'll just skip this for paucity of time because these are all elementary. I don't think this would be tested. Listen, it is very tough to remember these particular entries. Services of a business facilitator, business correspondent. Services of a business facilitator, business correspondent. Little important from examination point of view. Right from my examination point in time where I gave my attempt under service tax law. This is one particular attempt or this is one particular topic which draws its attention right from those days, good old days under service tax. Business facilitator, business correspondent. I'll come quickly to a slide to make you understand this particular business facilitator and business correspondent. We use this particular terminology for banking activity, for insurance activity. where correspondent is a person assigned as an agent. Business facilitator, it does not have agency permission. Now, these activities of a business correspondent, business facilitator, these are drawn from rural area, rural banking, rural area point of view. I'll give a very simple example. Pygmy. I don't know how many of you have come across this particular terminology where my business correspondent is authorized by a bank, to execute documentation, is authorized by a bank to lend or collect money. Now here, under Pygmy system, like Pygmy is something which is connected with postal department, where the business correspondent who has been authorized as a business correspondent, they go door to door to give a loan or to draw money from the borrower for banking activity, or similarly, money for savings bank account. Most of the people in rural areas where you don't have a a debit card, ATM itself is not required. Reason, now these are the people who doesn't have literacy. We are talking about those rural areas where insurance is required, banking is required. I'll give an example where I'll touch upon a business model before talking about a banking sector. This is a very, very fantastic example where couple of FMCG sector, once you get qualified as a chartered accountant, you would be placed, you will be selected by these FMCG sectors. Now, this is a practical case where you have to all have a understanding. Once you qualified as a chartered accountant, very good ransom will be paid as a remuneration where you will be inducted by FMCG sector. They will place you on a particular business vertical, I say business vertical, where you would be permitted to, or you would be placed in rural areas where there is no road, there is no mobile connectivity, there is no power. 6 months to 9 months in those areas, you would have a hi-fi mobile, you would be paid say 2 lakhs per month. These are the areas where the consumers, the end consumers, I would call that as a B2C. They use a soap for 3 to 6 months. That means to say, they don't use toothpaste, they don't use soap. Rather, 20 rupees to buy one item. These are the areas where you would be made to learn marginal costing, learn your cost sheet. You would be made to learn how to sell particular product. Come back and sit in a corporate world when the management sets your target. How do we increase our sales? How do we increase our top line? Sitting in the AC room, we always give a recommendation saying that, sir, increase the selling price by 12%. Sir, increase this particular or decrease the package by 20 grams. They're not looking at that particular activity. They want your efficiency. They want your equivalent to see how to extend the credit period taken from the sellers. Can you extend your supply chain management in an effective manner where you can reduce your operating cost? Now, this is where you will be expected to learn how rules function. Now, this is an example where this correspondent or a business facilitator. Business, I gave example of a pygmy business where these people go door to door. They write in front of the customer saying that, look, I've collected 10 rupees from you. I've collected 20 rupees from you. On daily basis, they appropriate 20 rupees to a loan. Now, Government of India, various schemes are extended, farm loans, pygmy loans, or your no, for their survival. Insurance, one of the classic example. You don't have a hospital, how can you sell an insurance product? Now, these are the facilities which are extended in rural areas where the government has felt the need. Let them open something called Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana, where opening a particular savings bank account, any insurance up to a sum of rupees 2 lakh or any medical attention up to a sum of rupees 5 lakhs, let us give the benefit to the people who have this bank account in rural areas. Integration of bank and insurance, which they're talking about, this business correspondence and business facilitation, where services of business correspondent are exempt. Services of business facilitator, again, business facilitator appoint a person called agent for extending this activities of insurance or financing activity. I'll come back to our institute material where they say that services by following persons in respect of following capacities. Business facilitator or business correspondent to a banking company, with respect to accounts in rural areas. This is exempted. So BF, business facilitator or business correspondent in relation to banking company in rural area, exempted. Any person as an intermediary to a business facilitator. So one step below business facilitator or a business correspondent with respect to services mentioned in entity number A. So in relation to banking services, the main act person called BC or BF or agent of BC or agent of BF, business facilitator of banking company are exempted. Business facilitator or banking business correspondent to insurance company in a rural area. So here, person or an intermediary in relation to insurance company, one step below is not exempted. So only banking defect, this is important. Banking, all the services of a business correspondent or a business facilitator are exempt. In relation to insurance, only those services of a business facilitator or business correspondent are exempted in relation to insurance. This is covered under entry number 39. This is one entry, as I said, it is covering from ages together. Almost 2 decades, this is there in a service tax era, which continues to enjoy its exemption. Yeah. They have elaborated. I would recommend please read this particular entry number once again for benefit of doubt from examination point of view. Entry number 39. Services provided to government. Let me see if there are any doubts before we go further. The business facilitator or business correspondent service is covered under reverse charge. Yes, ma'am. Insurance, this is covered under reverse charge. If this service is provided in urban areas, then taxable under not reverse charge. This is taxable under forward charge. Months. Students, we are at 7:34. Let's have a 10 minutes break. Say let's meet back at 7:45 to continue with our discussion. We were discussing on insurance, business correspondent, business facilitator under the previous entry. Now we will move on to the another entry 15, where services provided to government are exempt. Services provided by government, we have seen 17 entries. Here, services provided to government, another 3-4 entries are there, which are exempted. Please keep in mind, we had this educational institution. We had this educational institution term. What is an educational institution? What is covered is important. Similarly, services by an educational institution, services to an educational institution. These two were covered separately in entry number 66. So please understand this government services. When government services are exempted, when government services are received are exempted. These two bifurcations we have to understand. And one advantage of our Board of Studies material is the way they have designed these chapters, the way they have realigned the discussion is a well thought process where you understand this in this perspective. You read come further, you read another exemptions, again come to this particular thing, where you'll never get confused between that entry and this entry. So a lot of thought process went in terms of reading the Bail Act, in terms of reading the circular, in terms of reading the FAQs which are issued by the Board of Study, your CBIC. Also, there are a couple of press releases. All these were compiled in a beautiful fashion for our understanding. So my recommendation, please have your institute material and practice thoroughly from your institute material. Moving further, activities covered under entry number 3. Services provided to government. Services provided to government. Here, this entry number 3 is trying to exempt something called pure service. Something called pure service. This particular pure service, which excludes works contract service, or other composite supply where supply of involves supply of goods. So only labor is called as my pure service. This entry says pure services provided to CG, SG, UT or local authority by way of Article 243G, that is in relation to Panchayat, Article 243W, which is in relation to municipality. They are saying that any services which are called pure services, which does not have material, which is not a composite supply, provided to any of these 4 authorities for the activity covered under Article 243G or Article 243W are exempted under GST. Now, to give an example, most of you, I don't know how many of you are dealt this indirect taxation practice in your office. If you have to give an opinion, if you have to handle a construction client, you would have come across this entry number 3A for one or the other occasion for the government services. Panchayat municipality. Say there is a electricity post. Rather, I'll say electricity streetlights, electric streetlights. Electric street lights. This is part of your Article 243. This I'll say forms part of municipal or panchayat activity. Now, I can have contract 1, contract 2. Contract 1 only replacement of I would say failed bulb or tube. This is my contract 1. Contract number 2. I could be a contractor where I identify the failure, also replace the faulty bulb. Now here, supply of bulbs are not part of the contract. So here in contract 1, I only replace. The government or authority concerned gives me the bulb. So I'll say, sir, there are 30 places where bulbs are gone. Please give me 30 pieces. I'll go, I fix. Or complaints will be coming to the call center. Based on the call center complaint, I as an engineer, I as a contractor visit the respective street, I replace. So here, this being a pure service, I call this as a pure service. Covered under entry 3. Under entry number 3, I'm covered. Whereby I enjoy exemption. That means to say, as a contractor, if I charge, say monthly, rupees 2 lakhs. This particular amount I charge 2 lakhs is an activity exempted under GST law. In contract 2, I identify the failure. I also replace the faulty bulbs. Both identification and fixation, both are to my account. So what I'll do on periodical basis, I'll give number of visits. I'll give bulbs replaced. I'll give the amount incurred for this particular activity and raise a bill. This is called composite supply. And this particular composite supply not covered under entry number 3. This is what they are trying to explain. If it is a pure supply, exempted under GST. If it is other than pure supply, then we have to examine relevant provision to see whether this is taxable or not. Clear? Mansa, your understanding is correct, ma? If it is in urban area, this is not exempt. Perfectly correct. Coming back. Entry number 3A. Composite supply of goods and services to government. This composite supply of goods and services in which value of supply of goods constitute not more than 25% of the value of supply provided to central government, state government, union territory, or a local authority. For what? By way of activity of Article 243, Article 243W. Then that would be exempted. So here, if I have to travel back to our previous discussion, contract 2, if goods and services, goods is up to 25 and balance is service, then this is covered under entry number 3A. So when I give a bill, assuming my bill is for 100 rupees and my visits, this is my service. Service is say 78 rupees and goods is 22 rupees. My goods portion is 22 rupees. My service portion is 78 rupees. In this case, since the value of goods is less than 25%, entry number 3A is applicable for an activity which is covered under panchayat or municipality. By virtue of this, this contract value, when I raise a bill to the government, this would be exempted under GST. So what if month one, I'll come this way. Let me just clear this. They have not mentioned about continuous supply of service. Month 1, month 2, or month 3. Month 3, my goods services. My services is 80%, goods is 20%. Month 2, services is 30%, goods is 30 and service is 70. Month 3, goods is 50, services 50. Can I enjoy 3A here? Here it is not possible, here it is not possible. What would be answer for month 1? Can I enjoy entry under 3A for month 1? What would be your answer? Will I get a benefit under entry number 3A for month 1? Yes or no? What would be the reason for that particular exemption? Taxable, exempt. Okay. What would be the reason you're saying taxable? And I say unless reason is there, I cannot say it is right or wrong. Always supplement your answer with the logic. Like it's a composite supply. It's a like no price is fixed. Some explanation should be there. Now please keep in mind. Generally, when work is assigned, this work will be specified. What is the composition of goods? What is the composition of services? Now, we have to examine the holistic work, not the individual months. This is just a practical way how a running bill will be raised. Rather, there'll be value of goods, value of services, which should be quantified in a contract. So I have to examine the contract, and then take a decision whether entry number 3 or entry number 3A is applicable. Rather than this monthly bills are mere running bills, I split the composite bill. So when I split the composite bill, I cannot give an answer. So this is taxable, so this is exempted, right? So that way, I examine the total work and then decide whether entry 3 is applicable or entry 3A is applicable. That would be answer. So here, I wouldn't say I don't look individual month. I look the total contract. Based on total contract, if both goods and services are there, look for 3A. Only services are there, look for entry number 3. This is what we need to understand. Hope this is clear, students. Any doubts? Let me know. Let me see if there are any doubts. So far, so good. Moving further. By the way, entry number 3A, this is one entry practically when you get into practice, most of the time you would come across a scenario where the contractor comes and says, sir, my competitor has given a tender without GST. My competitor has given a tender, all taxes including. Please help me if I can save GST. So by and large, you will get the clients where they will come and ask you to see whether this entry 3 will help some way to say that this is a contract where I can save tax or my quotation can be competitive. When they participate in this bidding process, they wanted to get the tender. So this entry 3 and 3A are more relevant when you get into the practice. From that point of view, please understand once again how to read and how to apply this. Mansa is asking this question. So discuss input tax credit applicability in respect of service provided to government. Mansa, this input tax credit separate chapter is there. Section 16, Section 17, Section 18, Rule 42, 43. At least one full session we will discuss only on input tax credit. As of now, in simple terms, I would put this way. I'll make you understand this way. Input, output. If output is taxable, input can be availed. If output is taxable, subject to terms and conditions, evaluate your eligibility. If output is exempted, my input is not available. I repeat, basic way, look at your output. If my output service is rendered to government, taxable, then avail the input tax credit. The services rendered to government are taxable, subject to terms and conditions. Then evaluate the conditions when I can take the input tax, when I cannot take. So my services rendered to the government are exempted. When the services are exempted, I cannot avail a input tax credit. Like simple example, say this entry number 3A. I buy 1,000 bulbs from Bajaj. Each bulb I buy, 12% GST I pay. My billing to government is under entry number 3A. I don't pay any tax because my output is exempted. All this ITC is not transferred to P&L as cost. AS2, I cannot recoup my input tax credit. So I cannot take my input tax credit. Hope this is clear, ma? Mansa is asking this question. Here, taxable under reverse charge. Well, this rule formula. Can you make a little more clear your question, Mansa? I am not able to understand clearly. Make a little more clear your question. I can make an attempt to clarify it. Right? Next, services of fair price shops. Like you have these outlets where kerosene, sugar, pulses, rice, wheat, etc. distributed. So all services this fair price shops, they work on commission basis. If I give 100 kgs of sugar, I get 10 rupees as commission. So the commission earned by this fair shop price are exempted under GST. Similarly, insurance, we have discussed in the previous class, any money paid by the government for insurance of their employees or any person, exempt under GST. Any training provided to any person, their 75% or more of the training fee is paid by the government, then that is also exempted under GST. These are four restricted editions of services to government of these two. Entry number 3A draws importance from examination point of view. Next, leasing services. These leasing services are something like your TDS services, transfer of development rights, where what we need to understand is upfront amount. I'll explain the basic backdrop, then I'll come to this particular material what we are going to study here. Industrial Area Development Board. So for a moment, we have say MODA or TUDA. These are all KDAB, KDAB, MHDAB. These are all various boards which are for industrial or financial development. Now, to give an example, most of you would have heard a place called High-Tech City. High-Tech City, which is there in Telangana. This is like the IT corridor in the state of Telangana. Now here, this high-tech city is a particular zone identified for industrial or technological development. If you, some of you might be from Telangana, Hyderabad, you would have seen this high-tech city. People who have not seen, I'll just give the example this way. This is the industry, I would say this is industry which is meant for IT development. So what they do, they identify, say, 100 acres of land. This is my plots which are developed. So this is 100 acres of land where government wants to develop a particular business. Could be manufacturing activity, could be financial activity, could be technology activity, could be pharmaceutical activity. Like some of you from Haryana, if you have visited Gurugram, Gurugram is called as Japan of India. Reason, the one point in time, the so-called Chief Minister of Haryana, he has developed Gurugram as sector-wise, which is to attract Japanese investments. So here, a particular development board takes up a particular land, they convert into plots, and they assign rights to industry. Here, what happens? Step 1, allocate land. Step 2, evaluate performance and growth. Step 3, maintain the infrastructure. Step 4, sell the land to prospective lessee. Here, this is a process where the land is identified. They say, look, come and invest in this particular corridor. I have opened the gates where you come, you do your business, I'll give you what support you want. So I'm giving a infrastructure. I don't sell the land upfront. Reason, government, when I say government is not into the activity of real estate, they are into development related activities. So they collect something called upfront fee. They collect something called salami or upfront fee. Now, these are the ways where government gets some money for the purpose of this particular development of an industrial area. So this particular entry 47, what we are talking about leasing activity, this is where they collect some upfront fee. Then they will see how is this particular industry or how is that particular area performing. Like they wanted to see employment, whether employment is generated to the localites. They wanted to see, is there any augmentation of taxes? Means like no, the tax payments to the state government or the road taxes, etc. Are they happening? So if overall development is happening, then they will maintain the infra to the like based on the funds which are collected, and over a period they sell this particular land to this particular lessee who owns that particular land. The point in time when the decision is made. Now, for doing all this, they collect some upfront fee, which is called as a salami fee. Like example, say for a moment, I'm a manufacturer. I need 10 acres of land. They will not collect the market value of land upfront. What they will do, rather, like a lease charges, they collect some 30 to 15% of market value. This money is what we are trying to see, which is called as a lease charges. So what happens? Like at step 4, the authority consent does not sell the land. Then here, the board, whichever has been formulated, they will notify, look, the money what I've collected, I will not collect any tax. This is meant for industrial development. As the development happens, I get into an agreement to sell this particular land suitably. Generally, failure of this activity doesn't happen. More or less, wherever there is an industrial development board comes in, the land gets automatically occupied, industries do come, and whoever is the lessee, they would like to buy that particular piece of land. So this money, they get into a contract. In the contract, they clearly says that I'm not going to collect any tax on this particular payment, what I've collected from you. Coming back to our material. Upfront amount, which is called as premium, salami, cost price, development charge, or by whatever name, payable in respect of service by way of getting of long-term lease of 30 years or more. So here, any lease which is ranging minimum of 30 years, then this is covered under entry number 41. So what if the lease is for only 5 years? Then this benefit is not applicable. Unless there is a notification by a respective state or central government, I would not enjoy benefit of this entry. For development of infrastructure or financial business provided by the state government, industrial development corporation or undertaking or by any other entity having 20% or more ownership by central government, state government, union territory or industry units. Generally, whenever you look at your contract, this contract will run for 99 years. There is something called in Tamil Nadu, Sri Perumbudur. There is a industrial corridor where 99 years is the lease which they get into. Now, these are the cases where they're saying that any money collected as upfront fee, which is paid in bulk amount or which is paid in installments, then I get a benefit of entry number 41, where the contract itself will say no service tax or no GST. Suppose, God forbidden, something goes wrong when there is a denotification. In the sense, the government withdraws that whatever notification we have given for exemption from land revenue, exemption from tax, then all that benefit once withdrawn, then the entry, the activity becomes taxable at that point in time. Taxable at that point in time. So what happens here? The government will specify how this activity would be taxable and how the tax would be collected once this exemption is withdrawn. This is what we need to understand from entry number 47. Let me see if there are any doubts further. Mansa is asking this question in relation to input tax credit. Those government output services which are taxable under forward charge, who will get the benefit of input tax credit provided to government? It's a public money, benefit to public. Like a very valid question. Right now, for benefit of other students, I'll put it this way. Mans is actually thinking from a revenue perspective, public money, when it is given to government, why should the tax be levied and who's going to enjoy that particular tax? This is how Mans is looking at this particular non-exempted cases. Don't look from the public money point of view alone, Mansa. Look at your tax economy or taxation system per se. Start from input tax credit to output tax credit. Like the basic discussion, I think Chajja sir, Arun sir would have touched upon why we have come into this mechanism of input tax credit. Under Central Excise, we started with MODVAT, Modified Value Added Tax. This later in 1990s was converted as CENVAT. In 2000 era, when we came into sales tax to VAT, input tax credit on value added tax system came into picture. Now, if you come into this particular input tax credit system, Mansa, a point in time, like we have this break-even policy, a point in time where charging GST for a particular sector would be beneficial at a reduced rate rather than not charging GST. Now, to get an answer for this, Mansa, but like this, see, for a moment, most of you, once you get qualified, you have a choice. Get into practice, get into industry. Some of you would be interested to pursue your higher studies. Do your civil services. Once you do civil services and get into CBIC, you get an opportunity to work with this particular board where decisions are taken at a macro level. In the sense, I don't know how many of you have read customs. There is a anti-dumping duty, protective duty, assessment duty. There is a committee called task committee. So this committee comprises of economists, accountants, business people, marketing people, MBA. All these people together frame a policy where it is very tough for me to look at a particular industry, look at a particular business, look at a particular tax structure and frame a government policy. So here, few cases, though it is rendered to government, I does not give exemption. Considering the industry nature, where giving an input tax credit benefit to reduce the output tax, to reduce the cost of operations, it is viable. So considering from that point of view, this is a policy decision where the tax which is paid, collected from the government, it actually goes back to government. I render services to Panchayat school. Let's take example. So I do construction of I do a repair activity of a school building. If you take example of this Panchayat school, some portion has to be renovated. 50% is material, 50% is labor. Neither entry number 3 nor entry number 3A comes and gives me a saver. Now, on goods which I procure, I charge GST. Now, on machinery which I procure, I pay GST. So, all this when I charge to the Panchayat school, My cost of operations are reduced if I take a benefit of input tax credit. So at times it makes sense for me to charge GST. Now, if you look at the rate of tax, 12% is the rate of tax, 5% is the rate of tax. Now, giving it 5% gives me an edge of saving my tax which I collect from government. Accumulation of input tax credit is eroded, which hits to my cost sheet as a hit to P&L. This is how the services which are rendered to government are taxed at times sponsor. Hope I gave an answer to your question. Let's move further. Next activity, legal services. Legal services, entry number 45. Again, pretty simple entry, examination, wait and watch for another 4 marks. Exemption chapter, educational services, services rendered by government, services rendered by charitable organizations, services in relation to legal services. Again, that extending loans and advances, banking, like financial services, that is one another entry. Next is your legal services. What is covered here? This entry number 45 says, services provided by arbitral tribunal are exempted. Services rendered by arbitral tribunal to a person other than business entity. Look at your entry number 3, entry number 6, entry number 6A. Always business entity is kept outside exemption. Business entity is kept outside exemption. This is what we need to understand. So any person other than business entity exempted. To a business entity with an aggregate turnover up to such amount in the preceding financial year as it makes eligible for exemption. This is unregistered person, business entity. Person other than business entity. If you have business entity and you are not registered, then no need to pay GST. Here, this is business entity with an aggregate turnover up to such amount in preceding financial year as it makes eligible for exemption from registration. So here, unregistered person based on section 22. That is 10 lakhs or 20 lakhs threshold limit. Central government, state government, union territory, local authority, government entity. All these are exempted under GST in relation to arbitral tribunal. When I say arbitral tribunal, this is in case of settlement of cases as per Mediation and Conciliation Act, Arbitral Mediation and Conciliation Act. Like example, there is a settlement of debts, dispute, a civil case. Like I supplied some goods or services, there is a dispute with respect to IP rates, some other legal jurisdiction, quality issue. So instead of going to the court, I go to arbitral tribunal where both the parties appoint a particular person called arbitral tribunal for settlement, mediation and conciliation. Those cases, services of this particular person other than business entity are exempted. This is my entry number 1. Next. Entry number B. Services of a partnership firm of advocates. Now, please keep in mind, we are talking something called legal services. I'll just explain legal service and come to entry number B. This is the important crux of our discussion. Page number 91, legal services. Most of the time, students, when you do your internal audit, your statutory audit, or when you do your consultation of GST, please keep in mind this legal services tax to be paid on reverse charge by a business entity. Here, the term legal services is defined as means any service provided in relation to advice, consultation, or assistance. Advice, consultation, or assistance in any branch of law, in any manner, and includes representation service before any court, tribunal, or authority. So here they are saying that you advise, you give a consultation, you give a assistance. All these 3 activities in relation to any branch of law. Also includes representation service. Representation service. These are all as a bouquet I call as a legal service. Legal service. Let us assume for a moment, sir, I want my name change. When I want a name change, there is an authority called municipal authority. There is an application to be filed before municipal authority. I have to give a declaration and then get the name approved here. So here, is this an advice? Is this a consultancy in any branch of law? Now, question comes here. As an individual, I can go to the local municipality or local panchayat. I appear before this municipality or panchayat. Now, is this connected with branch of law? Answer would be no. It is a simple service where you fill a form, fill a particular form. Then, as per this, you give an advertisement in a local newspaper. Giving advertisement in a local newspaper, you need not be an advocate. For filling this particular form, you need not be an advocate. So, any service which doesn't require your legal knowledge, then that would not be called as a legal service. This is example number 1. Example number 2. So I want a registration under shops and establishment. So I want a registration under shops and establishment. There is an application. Download an application. Fill the form. Pay nominal fee. Then you get your registration done. This particular entire process can be done by a BCom graduate, by a consultant, by a legal advocate. Now, can I call this registration under shops and establishment a legal service required under any branch of law? Answer is no. So please evaluate this particular term legal service where there is an advice, there is a consultancy, or there is an assistance. When I say assistance, so I have to fill a particular form. So I have to draft a reply to a show cause notice. So I have to represent before a particular authority. Now, please examine where actually I do all these services before authority consent, where there is a branch of law is concerned, where I act as an advocate, then I would call this as a legal service. Now, so what if there is a show cause notice? Section 113 of GST Act gives me a power, something called, let me just make some space. Now, when a show cause notice is given, the assessee he himself or through authorized representative can appear. Authorized representative includes any person, a person who is qualified CA, CMA, CS, or an advocate who are authorized or an employee. Now, they have given list of people who have been authorized to do or so. There comes a representation activity. So, an advocate, by virtue of his degree, does a representation service, then that is called as a legal service. On the other hand, when I gave registration of shops and establishment, there is no necessity. My registration nowhere asks me a chartered accountant or an advocate to come and appear with an application. Only those occasions where it was notified an authorized representative to come and appear, I would call this as a legal service. This is one aspect most of you don't understand. Rather, we recommend to pay tax on reverse charge the moment we see a bill called legal fee from an advocate. This is a definition we need to understand. Now, when we come to the exemption entry number B, they say partnership firm of advocates, or an individual as an advocate other than senior advocate by way of legal services. So here, service provider, service recipient. So here they're saying that service provider is a firm of advocates. Like we have, say, Mehta and Mehta advocates, Kamath and Kamath advocates, Srini and Srini advocates, A and A advocates. It's a firm of advocates. Or individual other than a senior advocate. Senior advocate is a person who excels by virtue of his domain expertise on a particular law of branch of law, who is so called to be identified as a senior advocate, who practices in a high court or a supreme court, identified the Bar Council of India, is designated as senior advocate. So there are, when you look at the advocates, there are some advocates who's called as a senior advocate. They get identified as a senior advocate. Why? Bar Council gives some privileges to senior advocates. When court matters are listed for hearing, if a senior advocate is appearing, they generally get a priority for the cases or matters to be heard. And some relaxations are there in relation to senior advocates. That's all. The code of conduct, like we have our ICAI, we have Bar Council of India who regulates the senior advocates. So here, if a service provider is a firm or an individual who is other than a senior advocate, who renders legal services to advocate or partnership firm, to a individual advocate or partnership firm, or a person other than business entity, or business entity with an aggregate turnover up to such amount in the preceding financial year as makes it eligible for exemption. Unregistered person due to exemption, due to turnover, due to aggregate turnover. Central government, state government, union territory, by virtue, governments doesn't want to pay GST on legal services. This clause number B covers only these activities as exemption. Clause number B covers only these activities. So what is not covered? If a senior advocate renders service to a firm, taxable. Senior advocate renders his services to a business entity, taxable. Firm renders services to a business entity, taxable. Firm renders services to an individual, exempt. Senior advocate renders services to an individual, covered in clause number C. So here, please keep in mind, senior advocate to a law firm, senior advocate to an individual advocate. That's covered under entry number C, where it says any person other than a business entity with turnover so and so, central government, state government, etc. Here, services of a senior advocate are brought under taxation in relation to services given to an advocate or firm of advocates. This is what we need to understand from entry number 40. Let me see if any doubts are there. Services of Head of Judiciary, Honorable Chief Justice of India. Mansa, this question, it's covered in Schedule number 3. Schedule number 3, services rendered by the government authorities for discharging their public services are neither supply of goods nor supply of services. Very, very good question. I appreciate your correlation of doubts. Activities rendered by a Chief Justice of India or the Chief Justice of a High Court. These are all activities covered under Schedule 3, which is neither supply of goods nor supply of services. Now, please keep in mind, I'll just come to my slide to give one example in this regard. Examination. If they want to test your knowledge on entry number 45. Legal services. Say example number 1. Mr. A, who's an advocate. He is a service provider. Service recipient, business entity, unregistered person, aggregate turnover is 5 lakh. Activity. Say, activity is in relation to dispute before magistrate in relation to Legal Metrology Act, which is now called as Standard Measurements and Weighments Act. Now, this is a scenario where the service recipient, I call service recipient as say Mr. X. Mr. X. X is an individual who is a business entity. There is something called the Standard Weights and Measurements Act. Standard Weights and Measurement Act. Standards, Weights and Measurements Act. So there is an inspector who visited a particular grocery shop. In the process of weighing, they see that the 1 kg stone is weighing actually 800 grams. So the shop fellow, Mr. X, is using some fraudulent means. So this particular officer has seized his shop and said, come and pay 5,000 penalty. Otherwise I'll put you in imprisonment for 3 days. Now this matter went into magistrate. This becomes a civil case. Now assuming it's a civil case where advocate has to represent before the magistrate. Now here, if you look at this entry number 45, I'll just come back to our material. Services rendered by individual. Services rendered by individual. Not a senior advocate. Assuming that he is not a senior advocate. This is rendered to a person which is business entity. Then it is not covered under exemption. If it is now to a business entity with an aggregate turnover up to such amount in the preceding financial year, makes it eligible for exemption from registration. Now I cover under this entry. If you come back to our discussion, though this is meant for business entity, under entry number 3, I'm having an aggregate turnover less than 10 lakhs or 20 lakhs, then by virtue of this, it is an exempted activity. So what happens here? When Mr. A collects rupees 5,000 from Mr. X, though it is given to business entity, this becomes an exempted activity. Is it under forward charge? Is it under reverse charge? Notification number 13 of 2017 gives a clarity. As of now, this is under reverse charge. This is under reverse charge. Entry number 6 or 6A, I don't remember exactly. Where any services less than 5, okay. Sorry, not in relation to legal. Let me not confuse you. Entry number 13 of 2017, this is covered at reverse charge. Since entry number 45 gives me exemption, Mr. X need not pay any GST. This would be answer for this particular case. Any discussions, ma, so far? Aniket is asking this question. Senior advisor or maybe advocate render services to advocate or firm of advocates or registered business entity, then taxable. Yes, Aniket. If senior advocate is giving services, then look at this entry, clause C. Senior advocate giving services to any person other than business entity, it is taxable. To a business entity, it is exempted. Any person other than a business entity. Now, what is a business entity? Now, probably a firm, a legal firm who are rendering services, or individual advocate who's rendering services. In addition to legal services, they are rendering any other services. Probably that would be taxable. Any person other than business entity. Now, when you look at this entry, any person other than a business entity. Now, what is a business entity? Now, business entity could be a company, could be a partnership firm, could be an individual. Any person other than business entity. Now, partnership firm could be a firm of advocates who render legal services, who render other services. Like example, when you go to a law firm, they get a registration, they do mediation, they do some real estate documentation. They do a lot of activities where not only representation services or pure legal services are rendered. So if you're a business entity who, a senior advocate gives the services to legal services to business entity, then this is taxable. This is how we need to understand. So answer to your question, Aniket, yes, this is taxable. Let me just see any other doubts. Brilliant question. I'll read the question from Mansa. Advocate or a partnership firm out of advocates provided services to senior advocate. Generally, it doesn't happen, ma. Generally, it doesn't happen. Will it be taxable under forward charge? See, generally, services by a firm to senior advocate, 99.99%, we never saw these cases. Probably the extreme 0.1% cases where senior advocate doesn't want to defend his case. He happens to be a victim, where the other advocate, junior advocate, has to support a senior advocate in any of the legal proceeding. Then, the list of service recipient, they say the advocate or partnership firm, advocate of legal services, person other than a business entity. Then that case probably, when they say an advocate or partnership firm providing legal services, here, this entry, let me cover this. Here, when they specifically say individual as an advocate other than individual advocate, an advocate or partnership firm of advocates, here there is an exclusion. Here, no exclusion. So by virtue of this, now we are talking about advocates. Mansa, very, very interesting thing. Advocates know how to read a comma. They know how to read a hyphen. They know how to read a semicolon. So by any way, senior advocates get out of tax clutches, saying that since the term here they have used only advocate, they didn't exclude senior advocate. Advocate includes senior advocate. By virtue of this, they enjoy exemption. So this is how services given by a firm, services given by an individual advocate, given to a senior advocate, gets exempted. I thoroughly enjoy these questions. Reason, You're getting into the reasoning, you're getting into the drafting, you're getting into no reading in between the lines how to evaluate. This skills will help you once you qualify, get into practice. So answer to your question, Mansa, this is exempted. Sponsorship, generally, services of sponsorship in relation to sports, like BCA conducts cricket. Like we have this Central Services Authority who conducts some sports, national games, Olympic Association. There are few recognized associations or body when they conduct sports, they get money by way of a sponsorship. Now, unfortunate thing where government, though they have to do funding because of paucity of funds, they raise money by way of a sponsorship. They don't want to levy GST on these bodies or organizations, no, the persons who contribute money by way of a sponsorship. Example, so there is a cricket tournament, state level or zonal level or rural level. Now they wanted some cricket kit or sports shoe or no this what you call empire fees to be paid. So various funding where government is not having sufficient money, the money raised by these organizations by way of sponsorship are brought under exemption activity. Next is your national skill development. Again, where training sessions are conducted by this National Skill Development Authority. This money, what they collect, nominal fee, like no, assuming this National Skill Development Authority. I'll give an example. ITI, not ITI. I would say. Let me just erase this. Vocational courses. Vocational course, say computer training. There will be one agency authorized, no, I call them as a training partner. Like you have this NIT or various private parties. Some training partner will be identified where they'll say computer training will be given to ITI students, will be given to SSLC students, will be given to higher secondary students. In this process, they'll say 30 days MS Word, MS Office will be taught, where actual cost of event per student will be say 5,000. But they collect only 500 rupees from student. Balance 4,500 is sponsored by central government, state government, local authority or union territory. So any skill development center which conducts these training sessions, which is approved, which is identified as a skill development center or partner, are exempted under GST law. Unfortunately, this is a commercial event. Government gives an exemption for this particular training centers which they conduct. Performance by an artist. Again, this is one entry right from 1990 or 1995. Rather, I would say late in 2000, this came into picture. 2003 is a point in time. Under service tax, it started with a nominal entry. It carries its attention as on today, where they say any service in relation to music, art, dance, or theatre for folk or classic alone is exempted. Please remember, activities of music, dance, or theatre in relation to folk or classic are exempt. So your Western or your any other art forms which are not a folk dance, which is not a classic music, it would be taxable. So here The artists who are drawing their remuneration by performing these activities up to sum of rupees 1,50,000 per event, consideration for performance is exempted under GST. So this is what is exempted under this particular entry. Very few people enjoy this particular exemption. Right to admission, right to admission for museum, national park, wildlife. These are the basic things which are exempted. I'll come to a couple of other important discussion. Non-profit entity. Services by a unincorporated body or a non-profit organizations. Now we had this Residential Welfare Association. Entry number B. Services provided by a Residential Welfare Association carrying out any activity where up to an amount of 7,500 per month per member for sourcing goods and services from a third person, then it is exempted under GST. Examination, this is one entry which is a pet entry for examination point of view. I'll come to my PowerPoint. Services of a Residential Welfare Association. Residential Welfare Association up to rupees 7,500. This is what another entry which would be tested in your examination. Entry number 77. Here, how it could be covered, what would be tested, what is a unit, all this will be tested this way. I'll give an example. So there is a apartments of 500 members. These owners have a association. This association is required for, say, security. Then your lift upkeep and maintenance, your building upkeep and maintenance, your waste solid management. Then you have your say lighting and water. For common areas. For common areas. What they do, this association I call Resident Welfare Association. Resident Welfare Association, individual owners, third party. Resident Welfare Association will, it is a collective of individual owner association who take services from third party for giving these services. Here, under GST, monthly, any amount collected up to rupees 7,500 for this particular activity is exempt. Any money collected above 7,500 shall be taxable. Otherwise, taxable. This is what they are talking about. Now, I'll just come back to my entry to make you understand once again. Services by an unincorporated body or a non-profit registered under any law but enforced to its own members by way of reimbursement of charges or share of contribution for carrying out any activity which is exempt or up to amount of 7,500 per month per member for sourcing of goods or services from a third person for the common use of its members. So you should remember that there is a common use there is also third person who is giving those services. Now here, example number 1. Example 1. Security charges. Example number 2. Clubhouse charges. Example number 3. Lift maintenance charges. Now, security charges. Is it specific or common? Security is common. Does it fit into entry number 77? Answer is yes. Clubhouse charges. Clubhouse charges is not common. It is specific. Like, sir, we have a party hall, we have a function, we have a get together. I use a clubhouse. Then it is not a common service. Then entry and benefit under entry number 77 not available. Lift maintenance. This is again for common for all the inmates. Then again, I would say it is common. Benefit under 77 is applicable. This is how I evaluate entry number 77 for money recovered by Residential Welfare Association. Next question comes. Sir, when I have say 1000 units of apartments, I call units. There could be a possibility that say Mr. X owns 2 flats. Per flat, maintenance, my maintenance fee is say rupees 6,000. If I see entry number 77, since it is less than rupees 7,500, right? This is exempt. But as a Residential Welfare Association, RWA is collecting 6,000 into 2 flats, rupees 12,000. 12,000 is exceeding 7,500. What should I do? Shall I give a benefit or shall I charge GST? Answer would be, this is per unit. Accordingly, this is not taxable. Means I don't see individual unit wise, right? This is how the benefit extended. Next question comes. So what if Residential Welfare Association only does the activity of common maintenance, common interest, where per unit, my amount is say 6,000. 6,000 into say 1,000 flats. Now here, 6,000 into 1,000 flats into 12 months. Now this amount exceeds my annual turnover under section 22. Should this Residential Welfare Association register under GST? Answer would be no registration. Reason? Since per flat is less than 6,000, which is an exempt activity, though my aggregate turnover exceeds 122, registration is not required. Alternatively, sir, per unit, say amount is 8,000. Per unit, amount is 8,000. I have only 5 apartments. 8,000 into 5, 40,000 into 12 months, 4.8 lakhs. This is less than annual turnover under section 22. Accordingly, though this is exceeding rupees 7,500, I need not register. No registration is required for this Residential Welfare Association. This is what discussed in your institute material by way of an example. Very, very interesting classification. A table is given. Page number 100, institute material has given an example how to analyze this particular application of Residential Welfare Association. Clear? Coming back. Next exemption. So what if there are any recoveries like no electricity, road tax, property tax? Now this circular has given a clarity that services given by the association are taxable. Actual reimbursement by from the government authorities are not taxable. Like example, sir, individual owner flats property tax is paid by association. Because the property tax is a reimbursement, no service is given by residential welfare association, no tax. Rather, electricity is consumed by the residential welfare association for upkeep and maintenance of lift, for upkeep and maintenance of your common area lighting. Then that will form part and parcel of my maintenance charges on which GST has to be calculated. Next entry, transfer of going concern. Any activity which is done as a going concern, schedule number two, this is considered as a service. So any business is transferred as a going concern, this is exempted under GST. Like I can transfer one of the business unit or I can transfer entire business unit that enjoys exemption under GST law. This construction of residential dwelling we have discussed. Then couple of services are there under IGST. I'll come to the IGST exemptions. First exemption. And IGST notification 9 of 2017, services received from a provider of service located in a non-taxable territory by state government, central government, entity registered under section 12AA, 12AB, then online educational journals for education institution, person located in non-taxable territory. All these activities are exempted under GST. This is one activity where under place of supply, you would have studied something called online database access retrieval services. So any services other than OIDAR from a person located in non-taxable territory is exempted unless specifically taxable. Like one activity OIDAR. Second, services of a provider of service to a business entity in taxable territory. By virtue of notification 5 of 2017, section 5 under GST law, notification 10 of 2017, integrated tax rate, this would be taxable. I'll discuss in detail when I think place of supply, Arun sir would have touched upon. Remember, in general, OIDAR or those services covered under section 13 of IGST Act are taxable. Then foreign diplomatic, United Nations, World Health Organization, all those would be taxable. Activities in relation to TDS. Now, under GST law, TDS is a concept under section 51. Under section 51, TDS will be recovered by government authority or government agency, government entity. Only for the purpose of TDS, if there is a registration taken, then intrastate supplies of goods and services are both received by deducted under GST from an unregistered supplier. Would be exempted under GST under 9.4. 9.4 talks about real estate transactions. Please remember, this is only limited for general understanding. Examination, don't worry. They're not going to test you on real estate. So in case if there is any real estate transactions by a registered person, registered only for TDS, no GST payable. Similarly, services imported by SEZ unit or SEZ developer exempted from GST. Then IGST there is one Mohit Minerals case where this particular case law says that IGST is exempted to the extent IGST is paid as a consideration attributable to royalty or license, which is included in transaction value under section Rule 10 of customs valuation. Customs, I'll take the classes separately. Rule 10, which talks about transaction value. If license fee or royalty, if this is included for payment of customs duty, then IGST is exempted under this notification 6 of 2018 read with notification 10 of 2017. What I will do, customs I'm going to deal separately. This entry of IGST under GST law, also read with IGST under customs law, there cannot be a mutual levy. As of today, you can understand Mohit Minerals case. This is one Supreme Court citation where levy of GST parallelly under GST law, that is IGST, also under customs law are prohibited. This is what we need to understand with respect to levy of IGST on royalty or license fee. With this, we come to the end of discussions on exemptions which are covered under GST law. Mansa is asking this question: what items or services attract nil rate? Mansa, refer notification 2 of 2017, refer notification 12 of 2017. All those goods or all those services are nil rated. So this is the answer to your first question. Second question, Mansa is asking, advanced ruling authority tells that no GST on postal fee if less than 1,000 per day covered under entry number 14. Okay. Which is meant for residential purpose. Okay. Residential activity. Okay. I got your question. Any activity, let me come quickly to explain this. Residential activity. Residential activity, earlier, any activity where per day the collection is less than 1,000, this is exempted. Any activity for residential purpose is exempted. With effect from July 2022, somewhere 18th July 2022, virtue of 47th GST Council meeting, this is withdrawn. This is withdrawn. So here, what we need to understand, service provider, service recipient. Service provider is a unregistered person. Service recipient is a registered person. Activity. Residential dwelling. I call this as RD. Conclusion. If the renting of immovable property is given by a unregistered person, which is to a registered person for residential purpose, then this is taxable. No exemption. Renting of immovable property by an unregistered person to an unregistered person for residential dwelling. Like example, say there is a property which is meant for rent. We as an individual take the property for rental, own rental purpose. Then this is exempt. Registered person gives a residential property to an unregistered person which is meant for residential dwelling. Though it is given by a residential person, because it is for residential purpose, then this is exempt. Similarly, a registered person who gives the property to a registered person which is meant for residential dwelling, then this is taxable. This is under RCM. This is also under RCM. This is how this entry number 14 has been clarified in relation to residential activity. So what we need to keep in mind, any residential person who gives it for residential purpose, then it is exempted to an unregistered person. If a registered person gives to an unregistered person meant for residential dwelling, then it is exempt. Your case, Mansa, what you are asking is of a what you call PG or hostel. The advanced ruling has said that PG or hostel is not a residential dwelling. Rather, this is a commercial activity. This is a commercial activity. So in case of a PG or hostel, where up to 18th July, if it is less than 1,000 per day, it is exempt. Post 18th July 2022, this benefit of 1,000 per day is withdrawn, whereby any PG or hostel registered person who operates a PG or hostel given to an unregistered person, to an individual, this is taxable. This is what clarified in this particular advanced ruling. Hope this is clear, Mansa. There is another entry, entry number 12. Okay, let me come to entry number 12 also. Services waiver for renting of residential dwelling for users' residence. Residential dwelling. Entry, page number, Mansa. This is what I have explained. Renting of residential dwelling. Entry number 12. Okay. Page number 103. Page number 103. To register person is a proprietor consent. This is what we have discussed now. I don't see any other issue other than what we have mentioned here, Mansa. If you still have any doubt, Mansa, we have next session coming up on 19th. You can just message me, hostel fee rent covered as entry number 14, because it's a commercial activity. Otherwise, if it is a residential activity, it is exempted, Mansa. So you have any other doubts, ma? Please feel free. I'm available on 19th. I'll spend little more time to discuss once again on this regard. Students, will stop today's discussion at this point in time. We will meet back again to discuss on your time of supply and value of supply. Till then, good night, goodbye.